Just a quick disclaimer before I actually say anything at all. My mic won't connect to my camera, so the sound quality and changes might, I'll try and sort it out in editing, but it might be very noticeable, and I apologize for that. Hello all, this is just going to be a series of kind of broken down, where I'm breaking down an essay that I wrote for university, looking at women and their relationships to family and power in horror films, specifically this kind of like post-horror and folk horror. And today I'm talking about Hereditary, and I guess the official title, which I'm going to be using, is Hereditary, Exploring Maternity and the Monstrous Feminine. So I'm just going to be looking at the familial relationships and the kind of matriarch relationship in Hereditary. I am kind of talking through my essay. I'm just going to get a few clips in here as well, just to kind of help illustrate it. And I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome. My name is Caitlin, and today I'm discussing motherhood and matriarchies in the 2018 film Hereditary. Many theorists and filmmakers believe that horror as a genre is made for today's youth, uncovering forbidden topics and taboo subjects and helping them understand the path to adulthood. James Twitchwell stated that horror myths establish social patterns not of escape but entry, allowing youths and adolescents to understand and learn the nuances of adulthood and coming of age in a controlled environment, much like the oral folk tales and fairy tales of old. He followed this suggestion with the idea that stories are seen as socialization for young women in a patriarchal system. Troubled mother-child relationships were often used in folklore to help prepare children for maturity when they would leave their mothers and be separated from their childhood comforts. Hereditary, the 2018 film by Ari Aster, has some toxic representations of familial relationships and bonds that create a complex mother for the audience to puzzle over. They force the audience to confront this question: can you ever hate your own child, and if so, why? Forcefully pulling a thought that no mother would ever willingly confront into the limelight. This is perhaps a far more personal expression of female power than expected, for who is a mother scarier to, if not her own children? Ari Aster's directing debut Hereditary follows a narrative of a family losing the youngest member and the tension between the parent and the other child involved. This dynamic is interesting to see as we watch a mother, who loves all her children, try and reconcile with the idea that one is directly involved with the other's death. This inner turmoil examples Barbara Creed's argument from her book The Monstrous Feminine, that the level of horror a woman brings can be linked to her ability as a mother. This is something we see Annie struggling with through Hereditary. The narrative follows a family of 4 after their grandmother's death, and its impact in their dynamic, especially as her secretive past and life seems to have plans for them and their youngest daughter, Charlie. A tragic accident takes Charlie's life within the first half of the film. Annie, after making Peter, her son, take his sister to a party, the younger girl had an allergic reaction to some cake. Panicking, Peter drives home under the influence, and Charlie was decapitated as she stuck her head out the window to get more air. Peter carries on home, leaving the body in the car for his mother to find. The following events see the mother and son's grief and alienation, which later culminates in Ellen, the grandmother's, cult-like coven of witches manipulate the family to raise the demon Payman. In the first act, after her own mother's death, we discover that Annie had never wanted to be a mother herself. In a scene that is undisclosed as a dream or reality, she tells Peter, her eldest, that she tried to miscarry him, further explaining that she once sleepwalked into his and Charlie's room, doused them all with paint thinner, and woke up as she was about to strike a match. This had caused a rift between mother and son at a young age, which only deteriorated after Charlie's death. The film follows a dance between the 2 family members, as Annie is seen having an internalized deathmatch with herself, the expectation to love one child when he is directly responsible for her anguish of losing another. The leftover guilt and resentment from the sleepwalking accident holding a certain weight to their unspoken conflict, which comes to a head in a now infamous dinner scene. Constructing monstrosity's source as a failure of parental order to ensure the separation of mother and child, Aster manages to wedge a chisel in the hairline fractures he formulated. This scene is typically domestic for family layout. They are sat together eating and it looks painfully normal, yet the scene is uncomfortable to watch. The viewer feels like an outsider. The tension is at breaking point, and Annie's break does nothing to dispel this. She lashes out.
Fine, release me. Just say it. Just fucking say it. Don't you swear at me, you little shit. Don't you ever raise your voice at me. I am your mother. Do you understand?
We see her assuring him of her love, but acknowledging her resentment at the same time. Losing composure makes her more human, but also shows her beginning to grow unstable.
And I know you miss her, and I know it was an accident, and I know you're in pain, and I wish I could take that away for you. I wish I could shield you from the knowledge that you did what you did, but your sister is dead. But you can't take responsibility for anything. So now I can't accept, and I can't forgive.
So now I can't accept and I can't forgive reminds me startlingly of Medea's reversal in the old Greek tragedy. Annie's grief is allowing her to become a completely removed figure from the maternal warm constitution she began with. This new hysteric version of her is the one we then begin to lose faith in, the one that begins to separate her from Peter. There is sympathy from the audience, but you are no longer rooting for her. Appearance often marred by tears, the imagery changes to create a monstrous filter on the movie magic that usually surrounds women, further solidifying through visual evidence that she is now the bad guy, she is the monstrous feminine. And Annie is actually the connection between all the women in the film, which will lead me on to my next point, talking about Ellen and the matriarchy. The relationship between the women in Hereditary is a very destructive one. Ellen is absent, Annie is revealed to have never wanted children, and Charlie's character is unknown and ambiguous. And we can see her taking a head of a pigeon in the film's opening. Each character is nuanced and complex, but very detached, both subjecting and conforming to these expected characteristics of monstrous women. As well as dissecting a close familial relationship, Aster also manages to pull back the curtains on a more detached mother figure, Ellen, exempling a misguided representation of matriarchs, guiding the viewer through discomfort and grief in a surprisingly adept lead. He introduces Ellen as the oppressive presence in Annie's life. As an audience, we know from the first scene that Ellen weighs heavily on Annie and her family. Sitting like an oppressive cloud, her presence never really leaves them, hovering in the shadows like a bad memory. Even appearing to Annie, very briefly, in a few short frames. The tension is steadily built to come to a breaking point when they find her body above the family home in their attic, decapitated and defaced, covered in blood and surrounded in ritualistic paraphernalia. She's already an antagonistic character when she is revealed to have been the leader of a cult-like coven of witches. To Annie and the viewer, the matriarch is bad, but Aster manages to juxtapose his opinion to a certain degree. Images of Ellen, dressed in white, with a veil over her hair and a confetti of gold coins raining down, are found in her belongings, the cult members smiling and celebratory of their queen. Ellen is also mentioned to make several knitted doormats, something so typically grandmotherly that it fogs your opinion of the woman we never meet. The joy of the images and the evident love the cover members have for her only further contrasts the final scene where Payman, in Peter's body, is crowned with wood, dirty and covered in blood, surrounded by his decapitated parents and the cult members kneeling in supplication, nude and ecstatic. The final act's twist sees Ellen simply as a vassal for Payman, the demon's wishes. What could have been a matriarchal exploration of women in power and heads of families was stifled by Payman's presence in the film, the cult claiming that they'd corrected his first female body and given him this now healthy male host. However, there is still contrast between the two images. One full of hope and purity, her outside influence powerful but unsuspectingly warm, and the other desolate and lonely. The absence of hope seen in the slow zooming out of the treehouse, finding an abyss of darkness surrounds them. Payman's introduction disregards what we thought was a matriarchy, conflicting and celebrated as it was, and smothers it with this final composition of patriarchy, the demon having control over the events that transpire. This begs the question as to whether Ellen's disregard and coolness towards her family were linked to the demon, her power only manifesting when she gave herself over to him ultimately, removing herself from her bloodline. There is this loss of inhibition and human composure after the summoning of Payman. Ellen's coronation looks like a baptism of sorts. His is full of depravity and submission. A chilling chant of "Hail Payman," the last thing the audience hears, and reminiscent of those "Hail Hitler" chants you hear in sound bites from the Second World War. This could be an interesting commentary made by Aster about how, without the mother in a matriarch's presence, we all lose control and discipline is lost. The film comments on this idea of female power and familial ties, suggesting that mothers have a limited tolerance and maneuverability. Feminine power can be gained through shedding familial relationships, proposing the idea that to be powerful, a woman must have no emotional attachments. Motherhood is perceived as oppressive and bad, but contradicts itself as being a bad mother translates to being a bad woman. This only circles back to Sue Short and her theory that authentic power lies within the bad woman. Thank you so much for listening. I am going to have a little manuscript available on the Phasma blog. Please check us out, check my podcast out. I've got all my links in the description below. I guess. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'm going to try and make this a series. I do have a couple more points that I would like to discover. And I just want to put a little disclaimer in. I'm not a film student. I just really enjoy it. So this is just kind of like a personal, interest of mine that I'm kind of following up. But thanks so much for staying till the end. I hope you enjoyed it and have a nice day.